Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to stand here and have a lengthy conversation about this motion. I look forward to the members opposite being able to weigh in and bring their perspective as well. It's an important conversation, and it's one that I hope we have a chance to thoroughly discuss and at all times keep in consideration the impact that it has on New Brunswickers. Because ultimately what we need to do is talk about things that are good for the province of New Brunswick. During a second reading not too long ago, the member from Campbellton talked about the fact that I'm in a position where I need to be looking to put a mark on the files that we have our hands on, and a positive mark, and that is exactly the case that we see here. And the truth of the matter is, and everyone knows here, that at the end of this legislative session, I will not be seeking re-election, and it will put to end a period of time that I had a chance to serve the people of New Brunswick. Everybody gets elected, whatever that date is. Everybody walks out of here, whatever that date is, and there's a dash in the middle, and that dash is really the only thing that counts. What did you do with that time when you were here? I would humbly submit that we've worked hard to make sure things were better when we leave than when we got here, and this is an example of something that we need to do to make sure that New Brunswickers are taken into consideration. Before we begin, there are a few people that I'd like to thank for the ability to be here. I represent the riding of Albert, which is a tremendous constituency, and I hear all of you guys talk about yours being the best riding, and I let you go ahead and think that. But the truth of the matter is the Albert riding is the best riding in the province of New Brunswick. It's the riding that first elected a female in the history of the province of New Brunswick. It's a riding where natural resources of a fossil fuel nature were first found in the entire country. It's a riding where there's got a rich history and a lot of things that have happened over the years, and to be able to stand here and say that the constituents of that riding multiple times had faith in me to come and stand and represent them, it certainly means something. And I know each and every one of us feel that same way when we stand here in the legislature. They are citizens of the province of New Brunswick with whom I represent. You know, I think about my parents, my father, my mother. My father's a lifelong conservative. I wasn't always a conservative, so my relationship with him came and went. It's at the best point it's ever been in his and my life. Now, I joke about that, but my father's always been very politically involved, and as a result, I had a chance to be connected to the world of politics from a very young age. Learned a lot from many different sides, and I think many of us would say that without the influence and the impact of our parents, we wouldn't be here, or we'd certainly be different without that. So I'm very thankful for that. I think about the people that I leave home every day. Sorry, I choked. I think about the people I leave home every day and see Allison, Jameson. I don't only leave home, I have to leave the province. Everyone knows that we live in different jurisdictions. So to find time to be able to be together and enjoy our company, it takes creativity, because this job takes a lot of your life. It takes a lot of your life when you're here. It takes a lot of your life in the evening. It takes a lot of your life on the weekends. So for me to have somebody that's that willing to allow me to go and do good work on behalf of the people of the province, you can't forget that. You got to be thankful. I know each and every one of us feel that way about our significant others. We have children. I have 3 grown children who have made me proud. I have a grandson. And so every time you step out of your house, you're an MLA here, but there's a whole family tree that you're representing. People that have come before you, people that will come after you. So it's important to remember that when we're standing here in the legislature, we're not just someone that's in a business attire here. We're representing a whole legacy. And I say that because this is a conversation about carbon tax, but it's about more than that. I mean, nobody here is saying that we're blind to realities about climate challenges. And I don't want that to turn into it's got to be one way or the other. I want us to have a conversation about, collectively in this House, work that's been done over many, many years to put New Brunswick in the position that it's in. There are some good things about the position we're in. There are some challenges about the position that we're in. And as I walk through and have a conversation about this motion, it is not meant to say, I put this motion forward, so therefore my party and our government is great because of it, and you need to join me. And if you don't, it's because you're from another party. Let's take the partisanship out of this, because this conversation is going to be about a greater good and doing the right thing for New Brunswickers and for the overall challenge we have when we fight climate issues. You know, that motion goes through a number of different issues. I'm going to kind of try to break them down a little bit. But, you know, sometimes a tax is more than a tax. You know, there's philosophical differences and political differences about taxes. Some would say we need more and ensure that we distribute it the right way. Some would say we need less and let markets dictate themselves. But we're going to talk about this carbon tax for the purpose of this conversation. We're going to talk about it as it relates to what it is, what it does, and please hear me when I say I want to put an eye towards some of the consequences that it has beyond it just being a tax. Allow us to have a conversation where we take off the mantle of political partisanship and look at something that's been put forward to be a benefit to New Brunswickers. You know, it is true, what I said in the minister's statement this morning, that we have been opposed to the carbon tax since day one, since before day one. I mean, when I joined the team to run before I was ever elected, one of the big themes was that the federal carbon tax was going to provide pressure, undue pain, circumstances, costs. It was going to create problems. At that time, folks would criticize us for saying that we're just trying to create fear about something that hasn't even happened yet. Well, we're down the road a little bit. And the carbon tax, in the way that it's manifested, is a tax that was put on and progressively increased and progressively increased and will progressively increase further. And that old fable of the frog in the pot that gets in the pot and you pour warm water on it and it's fine, and then you continually turn the heat up on that until it gets hotter and hotter, that frog will boil to death without even knowing that the temperature's changed. If you take one, though, and try to throw it into a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out. This carbon tax is akin to that slow increase in temperature, bit here, bit there. This carbon tax is the equivalent of a 23% increase. And I remember somebody saying to me, well, that's only 3 cents a liter. Well, 3 cents a liter is significant, but it's 3 cents on top of the last increase, and the last increase, and the future increases. So we need to have an eye towards the progressive and cumulative effect of a tax and the impact that it has upon us. And you know, not all taxes are created equal. And what I mean by that is that the concern with a federally mandated tax that's meant to be applied unilaterally on a national scale means, and I'm not even going to criticize the Prime Minister for the intentions. This could have been a tax that was created with the intentions of doing exactly what they said it was going to do. However, when you try to spread a single tax across a nation as diverse as Canada, as regions as varied as our country, you're going to get it wrong. And the federal government has already recognized that it was disparagingly unfair to Atlantic Canadians as it relates to heating oil and adjusted accordingly. We have to admit, and none of us would disagree, that jurisdictions throughout Canada are very diverse. I know where I'm from, in the Riverview area, down through Albert County, it's rural, it's picturesque, it's beautiful. But we don't have the same infrastructure that Mississauga, Brampton, Vancouver, or Calgary would have. We're going to get there someday, trust me. Albert County, subway's coming, trust me. But the truth of the matter is, regions are different, cities are different, and communities are different even within the provinces. So a carbon tax that let's say there's a pure motive behind it to discourage people from using fossil fuel. I get that. Let's acknowledge that for a minute. And in certain areas, it works. When someone has the opportunity to access affordable public transportation as a viable alternative to get to work or to go to organizations, clubs, recreation, whatever the case may be. Here in New Brunswick, and I've said this several times, and I keep saying it because it's absolutely true. When I look in my area, in my constituency, I know that someone that works in Riverview, that lives in Riverside, Albert, has no other option but to get in their vehicle and make that drive. The carbon tax does not incentivize that person one little bit.
No alternative, 100%.
Unfortunately, though, it penalizes them. And I'm going to give the Prime Minister the benefit of the doubt that that's an unintended consequence, and that wasn't his intention when he put this tax together, but that's reality. When I think of Miramichi region, the Charlotte County regions, Albert County, Kent County, northern New Brunswick, the expanse of northern New Brunswick where the member from Campbellton is from, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. But you have to have your own transportation in order to be able to move yourself around within that situation. And so a tax that is meant to discourage you from using your vehicle, it's going to be problematic. Great if it means that I'm going to think twice about going for just a leisurely drive. But when it affects people from 9 to 5 and from Monday to Friday and puts them in a situation that they can't help, that's problematic. And then we've also heard that there's a rebate for the tax. You'll get it back, okay? Fair enough. Again, I'll give the federal government the benefit of the doubt that they felt like it was just a simple mathematic equation, and if I put in, I would get back out. But there's a couple of problems with that. As I've said when I did my budget speech yesterday, I certainly am no student of accounting or mathematics, but that's not the case. And when subject matter experts are coming saying there's a disparity there, it makes me think we have to stop here and not just take that at face value. When we have people that are saying $7 billion goes in and $35 million comes out, where's the difference go? I don't know. But at the end of the day, my simple grasp of mathematics would say I will not get all of that tax back. But let's say we do. Let's take a moment and just say that if I put in $10 of carbon tax, I get $10 of carbon tax back 2, 3, 4 times a year. That means that the money I put in comes back in my pocket, so it begs the question, why would you even do that in the first place? Why would you even do that in the first place? If there's a net washout in the pocket of the taxpayer, why would you do it? Well, I understand it's to cycle the money through a system and ultimately to put it into different places, but what that means for that family in Miramichi is that they put that money out. They get it back in months from now. Well, you know what? When I travel the province and I talk to hardworking families all over the place, they don't need any more money going out. And they can't afford to have it come back months later. Their cash flow is very tight. And for us to take money out of their pocket only to say we're going to give it back in a few months, well, it compromises them. It compromises the integrity of their buying power. And we're heading into Easter weekend. It compromises the ability of them to, if the thought that a family didn't get their carbon tax rebate check and they didn't have the money to buy Easter gifts for their kids, well, then we're doing the wrong thing. We're doing the wrong thing. If it's just a washout in a cycle, then why do it? Why bother? We shouldn't be doing that. And the other thing about this is that it's not just 3 cents at a pump. or whatever the cumulative amount is that we're at now, or wherever it will be when we get to the end, it's not just the price at the pump. Fuel goes into vehicles, absolutely, but guess what? Nothing ever winds up on a shelf, a grocery store, a retail outlet, a private business, a law firm, anywhere without trucks and transport bringing them. Fuel costs are astronomical for these corporations, astronomical for them. We have had reports of significant increases in fuel costs from all different sectors. Well, when a company experiences a significant increase in their fuel cost, they don't look at that and say, that's the cost of doing business, I will therefore absorb it. The supply chain to retail, wholesale, virtually any business is not going to absorb increases to cost cash flow that they experience. What they will do is they will transfer that increased cost throughout their supply chain, which ultimately brings us down to who? New Brunswickers, consumers. So I drive up to the gas pump because I have to. I can't drive any less to work, and I pay an increased fee at the pump there. I then get home and still have to use that same vehicle to take myself to the local grocery store to feed my family. But the grocery store, who's experienced increased and significant cost because of their fuel consumption, are now charging 99 cents for something that they would have charged 79 cents for. That banana has nothing to do with the gas pump, but it has everything to do with the gas pump. So it's important for us to look at this holistically. We need to look at this from a perspective of everything that we pay a dime for is going to be affected by the increased costs from a carbon tax that gets applied. So when we say that it's an in and out exercise and money comes back to your pocket, well, like I said, I don't necessarily believe that. And even if it did, why would we keep somebody's money when times are already tough and tight? I think that we need to be more interested in unlocking and unleashing buying power from New Brunswickers rather than complicating it. The motion indicated that the cost of groceries for a family in New Brunswick is going to go up by about $700 a year. Now, what percentage of that's the carbon tax? That's where this gets confusing, because costs get increased on goods and services, costs get increased at the pump, costs get increased in a variety of different places and get that passed on. So it's a nebulous calculation that's very hard to identify. So at the end of the day, just eliminate it. Now, that's irresponsible, people will say. It's irresponsible to reduce or remove or eliminate a tax that's meant to clean up the environment. Fair enough, and I agree. We're going to address that a little bit later on in the conversation. We're going to talk about real efforts and real impacts to clean up the environment and to move New Brunswick forward. And to actually step back and look at the climate as a whole, not just from the parameters of the New Brunswick border, but from the global situation as it truly should be. And, you know, this motion is put forward. I've made a couple of minister statements on it. The leader of the opposition, she's weighed in as well. I've had a little bit of fun there. We had a little bit of jokes here and there about it. But that's because parties typically don't get along. So when we make it fun, it's because we're kind of joking that Liberals and Conservatives are agreeing with each other. But isn't it a shame that that's a joke? What if that became a reality? What if Liberals, Conservatives could come together and put pen to paper and unite on something that makes sense for the province that they live in. That's what we need to aspire to. And we're seeing that the carbon tax issue is becoming less and less of a partisan issue and more of an issue where jurisdictions are saying to the federal government, we have issues. Not different than what I'm saying right here. We're saying federal government, Ontario is different than Alberta. Federal government, New Brunswick is different than Nova Scotia. Federal government, we're in a different situation than other provinces. 7 of the Canadian provinces have put pen to paper and said, Mr. Trudeau, this tax must go. That speaks volumes. We know lots of times, and I've seen over the course of my life history, where a particular province will have an issue with the federal government. And sometimes that can be chalked up to partisan bickering. Sometimes there's personalities involved. I mean, sometimes it could be legitimate issues. But when 7 provinces of different political stripes come together and say, we're united in the fact that we feel like this is not hitting the mark. I don't think anybody's being nasty with it. I don't think anybody's being too abrupt. But 70% of the provincial provinces have said, yeah, this isn't working. And it's going to have and has had consequences that we need to address. I don't think anybody here in this legislature, I certainly don't think anybody in the province or anybody that would be watching would see something like that and not see the significance of over 70% of a country's jurisdiction saying, we are united and we want to see something change. You know what? What tells me that this is something that these provinces are legitimate in their concern for is that within those provinces, each individual provinces would have many differences with each other. Many items where these provinces would not agree with each other. And in other areas, these provinces would be in complete alignment with the federal government. So you've got an absolute mosaic of different opinions throughout the 7 different provinces who are 100% aligned. I don't know. You know, people have been around here a lot longer than me, but I don't know of a situation where I've ever seen that high a percentage of provincial jurisdictions align on any one single issue. So that in and of itself means we have to take a look at this, and it makes sense. And I'm standing here in the legislature of New Brunswick talking about something that's very important to me. To the member opposite's point, you're here for a short time, you better make a mark. Well, this is one of those marks. And whether members are in this chamber and they agree with me or disagree with me, I can agree to disagree with you respectfully, but I will not change my mind that I would not stand in this legislature and stay silent about something as important as the well-being of the finances of everyday New Brunswickers. Couldn't do it. We have to stand up when we speak up. I did a minister statement this morning where I said, clarity is crucial on subjects that you speak about here in the legislature. And regardless of what those subjects are, when you stand up to speak, you must be clear what you stand for. And at everything, and myself as well as my team members, whether there's agreement or not unanimously, we agree on the importance of New Brunswickers. And I will allow that sentiment to transcend to all corners of this legislature. I do not believe that there isn't a person in this legislature that isn't sincere in their desire to see New Brunswickers' well-being taken care of. Absolutely. I'll take that to the last day I walk out of here. We might have a little fun, poke a little joke here or there, disagree on some things, but there's a fundamental base value that we all share as people that have stepped up and said we want to represent New Brunswickers. It's because we care about them. And that's why this is a motion that can be something of massive significance. I have been in this legislature for 6 years now, and I've seen a couple of times where all sides of the House come together on an issue. I've seen unanimous votes to approve something in this House. And you know what, Madam Speaker? Something happens in the room when you see that. Because you have 49 different personalities in this room representing 49 very different constituencies. So when something is so important that it can unify the thoughts and the minds and the votes of 49 people, that says it means something. I've seen that a couple of times. I hope to see that in this situation. I feel like we have the opportunity to do so, and the precedent's already set. Next door to us, in a similar jurisdiction, the province of Nova Scotia's legislature recently passed unanimously something very similar to what we're talking about here today. And some would say, well, you know, we've got a legislature with a variety of different parties in it. Well, the Nova Scotia legislature has Liberal, Conservative, NDP, and independent members. Change out NDP for Green, and that's the same dynamic and mix that we have here in the province of New Brunswick. So the ideological approach towards the Nova Scotia legislature, despite significant and various differences, I'm assuming on any given day, aligned, came together, and unanimously within that legislature they decided, well-intended or not, the carbon tax has having an adverse effect on Nova Scotians, so we are going to unanimously vote to call on the federal government to eliminate that tax. Imagine if we do that here. Imagine if we do that here. I am hopeful, and I am encouraged, and I feel like we can accomplish just that. You know, I did make statements about the leader of the Liberal Party and her comments about wanting to delay and pause the carbon tax. I appreciate that. I sincerely do. And I feel like a thoughtful conversation would have taken place within the Liberal caucus to come to the conclusion that that's something that needs to be done. And folks, here in this room, or watching as this is unfolding, we need to extend thanks and gratitude to the Liberal Party for being able to do that. And you know why? Not very often do you see a Liberal provincial party and a Liberal federal party not 100% aligned. So I know for the Liberal Party of New Brunswick to be able to make a statement through their leader that we need to look at this, we need to pause this, that is significant. That is not lost on me. I will push you and expect and hope that we can work through that to be more significant. But when the leader of the Liberal Party of New Brunswick tells the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, I don't agree with something that's being done and I want you to stop it, we all need to take a moment and recognize that. And that's very much appreciated from myself to you. My rare moment of being nonpartisan, I'm going to give you a little kudos for that. But we have to push through partisanship when it comes to environmental awareness, climate change action. You know, there's lots of things I love being political about. Get me back to a question period. Let's have some fun, right? So, but when it comes to issues, tomorrow, you're going to have some for me. Perfect, right on. So there's things that we're going to need to do here to collectively recognize that this is beyond and should transcend any political banner. I've talked at length, and you know what? Sometimes I probably am too boastful about some of the accomplishments that we've made in the Department of Natural Resources.
No, not you. Not you.
No. They're supposed to chirp. They're supposed to chirp.
You don't have to heckle.
Well, it's a good thing that everybody's awake. I'm talking half in jest, but over the course of the last 6 years, the Department of Natural Resources has had the opportunity to make significant and I believe positive changes, and changes that I feel will transcend my period of time in government. One of the things that will allow someone to feel like you can take the baton and pass it to somebody else is that you've prepared the way properly so that they can carry on and continue that work. I wanted to have the job of Minister of Natural Resources. When you run to be elected, it's a gamble. Whether you're going to get elected, whether you're going to form government, whether you're lucky enough to be chosen as a cabinet minister. But with everything I had in me, I wanted to have an opportunity to be given the position so that I could work on something that had meant a lot to me for the majority of my adult life. So we were able to do that. I was fortunate to do that. I do not take that lightly. Every day we got to work and did something. And at the end of 5 years, we were able to say that we put together over 300 changes to policy, legislation, and regulation. That's not insignificant. And there's some housekeeping within that, but most of it was meant to move forward and advance the causes of conservation, and to move forward and advance the opportunities to create economic activity while at the same time having an eye towards environmental responsibility, bringing biodiversity and ecological sustainability to areas where it had been marginalized or forgotten in the past. Energy was an accident. I didn't know when I was getting elected that I would become so passionate about what New Brunswick has done, where we are now, and where we can be. To not just become, but to continue to be a world leader when it comes to powering our economy with clean energy, changing the dynamics about what things look like, and taking opportunities about what's in front of us. I mean, what we've done, and here's where I must be getting weepy in my old age, because again, I'm going to point to the Liberals and say, collectively since 2005, we've reduced 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the province of New Brunswick. That is not insignificant. That is 1 million tons of carbon dioxide removed from the atmosphere. That's good work done by hardworking people. Exactly. We should be very thankful that that work and that effort was put forward. And when we talk about, how many people here, don't raise your hands, I guess you're not allowed to raise your hands, but I grew up in an area where there were pulp mills. I'm sure many folks in the area, yeah. We grew up around pulp mills. And I remember on days where the atmospheric pressure was a certain way, you could smell if the mill was operating, you know? I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you here. Drive by those areas again during the conditions where the atmospheric pressure is the exact same, and you're not going to smell that nearly as much. Because the industrial sector in the province of New Brunswick has removed 98% of the sulfur dioxide from the emissions from our forestry operations. That's significant. Where we are today, little old New Brunswick, and I tell you this, I've traveled to Europe, I've traveled all over the country, and I continually am amazed by people coming up to us and saying, it's amazing that a spot like New Brunswick can generate over 80% of its electricity in non-carbon emitting means. We are considered a leader in jurisdictions, not just through this country, but beyond. People look to us for the pioneering vision that we had to empower nuclear in the province. We talk about Mactaquac Dam, but that is a significant source of renewable energy. Let's talk about where we're going. We're going to an age where we are going to put 5 times the federal government regulated amount of renewables on our system and on our grid. 5 times. That's absolutely amazing. When people say that we don't care about wind, we don't care about solar, nothing could be further from the truth. We are going to drastically expand our footprint of renewable energy. We are also going to drastically expand our footprint of non-emitting energy, 600 megawatts of new nuclear to create clean, affordable, reliable electricity. To continue to help us meet those targets, because by 2035, the province of New Brunswick will have reduced another 43% of greenhouse gas emissions. So, how are we doing? New Brunswick is doing its part, has done its part. We will continue to be diligent. Like I said, our commitment to our clean energy strategy is paving the way. We are seeing us continue to be that leader. So, I come back to the carbon tax. We aren't arguing about the fact we have to fight climate change, and with what I just went through, I would argue that the province of New Brunswick is working hard to do its part. The carbon tax, although maybe well-intended, the unintended consequence of that winds up being more pressure on an already pressured New Brunswick wallet without turning off any emissions. That's not hitting the mark. That's why 7 provinces have said we need to eliminate this tax. That's why the Nova Scotia government unanimously voted a motion very similar to this. That's probably why the Green candidate in the Hampton riding, who was just nominated, has also said that the tax doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I mean, we've heard from Liberal leaders, Green candidates. It doesn't matter. It's not a partisan issue. It's an initiative that's not achieving the goals that it was set out to achieve. Now, I know the Green Party is going to have some fun with this. I've already seen some tweets that are out there, and I'm concerned about that. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments over the last 20 years have put New Brunswick in a place where we are respected amongst the country and increasingly so amongst the globe. So we need to talk about the facts. We cannot talk about political rhetoric. I've seen some of the stuff that's going to come out and what's going to be talked about with the Green Party. Please ask me questions in question period. Please give me an opportunity to stand and speak, because I think we'll find that there are some records that will need to be corrected after we have this conversation. I am thankful for the time that I've had here. The next period of time isn't promised to me. We don't know where we'll be tomorrow. So each and every time I stand up here, it is something that makes me feel very fortunate. I'll be finishing out this period of time, but with the good fortune of having the distinction of being the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. So it was important that as I went through this, one of the things I did was bring the final part of my speech in to talk about the last part of the ministerial experience I've had, but one of the most rewarding. Because since before I was the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, I have worked with many chiefs and leaders and consider them friends. And one philosophy struck me more than anything else within our First Nations. They live in today, but they look to 7 generations in the past to learn lessons that they can apply 7 generations in the future. May we only be so fortunate to have that kind of foresight, and may we all unite here in the New Brunswick Legislature to unanimously vote to eliminate the carbon tax and get back to doing things that are right for the environment and right for New Brunswickers. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.